See. So hi everybody, I'm Pete, and I am from Toronto, Canada, and I'm actually the CTO of a company called BuzzData. But because this is a awesomely radical and sort of leftist-inspired conference, we've heard from a lot of really progressive thinkers over the last couple of days. I figured I would take a rare opportunity to actually digress before I start talking to you about BuzzData, because I figure that instead of just showing you what I'm up to, I should tell you about where it actually came from. So I want to talk to you about mining, which might seem like a weird place to start, but I'm not actually talking about data mining. I'm talking about this kind of mining, the sort of mining that got started in a big way back in the 1849 to 1856, I think, was the big boom, where San Francisco ended up becoming this major economic force, and it was instrumental in making California the third largest economy in the world. And in a period of 6 very short years, they actually saw a boom of 180 times in population growth. If you are a fan of comparison, it's sort of like almost like the Groupon of the 1860s. Lots of people showed up, except instead of exploiting companies, they were exploiting young people and immigrants. Now, some of you might actually still be mining today. I don't know if anyone knows Minecraft. I know I've certainly lost a couple of weekends to it myself. It's a lot of fun, and it's harmless, and it actually gave me sort of an idea for a startup. I don't know, I'll give you a quick little pitch. So what happens if you take Minecraft plus Groupon? We'll worry about some of the details in the business plan later. Clearly, there's going to be massive profit and probably a zombie horde. I sort of am saying this to set the stage for the fact that mining actually makes me deeply uncomfortable. And I want to talk about our appropriation of the term mining for what we do with data, because I think that we're all here because data matters to us. And it certainly matters to me. And I'm upset about the fact that we've appropriated the name data mining for what we do a lot of the time with the data that we get. I think it's a mistake. So what happened during those years? What was the primary innovation in California at that time? What was Silicon Valley working on? Well, it's actually simple. It's deep. It's mine shafts. It's this amazing technology that allowed men to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the earth and pull out natural resources. So they made a lot of money. A lot of people got incredibly rich. You know, the hundreds of thousands of people that showed up to extract these resources from the ground certainly all believed that they were going to be getting rich. So everyone wins, right? Well, I'll tell you who didn't win. This guy. Unfortunately, mining sort of set the stage for an awful lot of the problems that we face in the world today. The Californian dream was really the site of massive amounts of corruption, taxation, confiscation. People would just come along and take what you had. The crime was horrendous because it was lawless. There was vigilantism unlike ever seen before in the developing world. And frankly, I'm really upset about the fact that a lot of the anti-immigration policies and ideologies that you see emerging from some parts of North America started as a result of trying to keep foreigners out so that people could hoard the riches for themselves. But probably the most heinous crime that we're still dealing with today is this. It's this massive environmental destruction. This is a Superfund site. It's one of about 900 in North America. And a Superfund site, in broad layman's terms, is an area that is so polluted and so destroyed, so toxic, that we don't actually have the resources or the technical ability to clean it up completely. I mean, they're making slow progress, but we're talking about a practice of resource extraction that took absolutely no care to ensure that there was a long-term viability for the people, for the environment, for whatever was there before. So it sounds pretty evil to me. Who was behind this? Well, you might have heard of a guy named William Randolph Hearst. He was one of the original sort of mining barons of the sort of imperial Californian dream. You might actually also be familiar with him through Citizen Kane, which is actually sort of a semi-autobiography of his life. And he started off in mining. He ended up becoming a media pundit. He started moving into real estate. But the real legacy to me that we're living with today, beyond massive greed, is the idea that the Hearst Corporation and his sons and all the people who have come after him are ultimately responsible for the creation of 8 out of 10 Superfund sites in North America. As a casual detail, their propaganda machine also pretty much single-handedly orchestrated the Spanish-American War. There's an apocryphal quote, it may be true, it might not be true, but him saying to one of his newspaper illustrators, "You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war." So this steams me, but it actually gets better. So fast forward to 1893, skipping a lot of history, I apologize. We're at the Chicago World's Fair, where some doofus proposes the idea of taking this amazing technology of digging deeper and deeper into the earth, flipping it around and building higher and higher into the sky so that they could actually start using some of the same philosophies about strip mining on people instead of these resources that were in the ground. And I hate to sound like a tinfoil hat wearing sort of conspiracy theorist, but ultimately we are at the dawn of an era where we get to decide an awful lot about the culture and politics around how people and society perceives data. And language is extremely important. Our sort of casual adoption of the term data mining and all the cruff that comes along with it means that we're adopting the language of imperialism to describe that thing which we consider to be that big, great hope that can save us. It's a completely renewable resource, it's clean, it doesn't destroy the environment, it happens to have a corrosive effect on corruption. And I mean, this is a resource that actually scares the shit out of people who have an establishment that depends on power, and something that gets more valuable as more people are able to see it scares the crap out of these people. So I don't believe in griping without actually proposing some counter-arguments. So I'd like to propose some ideas. You might like them, you might not. But how would you feel about calling yourselves data dancers? Or maybe data painters? I don't know. My actual favorite is the data singers. The truth is that I think that we are actually looking at a bit of an identity crisis in the data world. I think that our marketing and our positioning and our messaging of how we describe what we do to people is by necessity changing. The idea of are we the young, cool, hip Robert De Niro, or are we the sweater years De Niro? This is my ridiculous attempt at saying that these are two faces of the same thing. And sure, there's an awful lot of things that you can do with data that are boring or corporate or just for generating money or making sure that the corporations in the world know what we want to buy next. But as we all know from hearing about all the amazing things that are happening in our ecosystem, there's also a lot of incredible things that can happen too. So data struggles with an identity. And frankly, I'm sympathetic. I mean, I've had lots of identity changes in my life, some of them deeply regrettable. So we have this thing and we care about it, and it's actually roughly a $100 billion industry every year worldwide. There's actually roughly 15 million people who use data every day as part of their job. And yet, somehow, data isn't a real thing to most people. It's not a primary document type. It's not a song. It's not a picture. It's not a Word document. It might be an Excel file if you're savvy, if you work in an office. But for most people, data is this thing that occurs sort of in the context of something else. It's a statistic you hear in the news. It's a chart you might see in the New York Times. And I think that this is slowly changing. There's been an explosion of sort of excitement in our space, in our world over the past couple of years. And people are now starting to realign how they perceive this whole data thing that we're talking about. So is it the fact that the technology has expanded to allow storage and computing capacity that is dwarfing what we had 3 years ago every 2 years? That's part of it. Is there a strong focus on transparency in government and in the corporate world? Yeah, that's helping. certainly the policies that are driving some of the transparency initiatives are making it clear to the people who would otherwise want data to be held back. It's making it clear to them they're not going to be able to hide behind scanned PDFs for much longer. You also have guys like Tim Berners-Lee who've sort of realigned their voice to get behind linked data and the semantic web. And you have awesome dudes like Hans Rosling, who's like a cheerleader for our movement. I mean, I love this guy. But I actually don't think that any of these things are really what's making people change. So what is it? Oh crap, that's not the slide. I think what's actually changing is that our relationship as a society and as a people to data is changing. Data used to be this ephemeral thing, and it wasn't something anyone was actually thinking about. Stats were just damn lies, and there's an entire industry around analysts that take all the data that they used to be able to get from your Reuters and your World Bank and your Economist Intelligence Unit and pay a lot of money to get that, and they'd sort of refactor it down to the point where you'd get like a summary or a pie chart or something, and they made tens of, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 20, 30 years becoming experts at doing this. But increasingly, people are wanting to peek behind the curtain. So we all know what this is. The data blog inspires us all. And it sort of takes advantage of this awesome truth that people want to run the numbers themselves. That it's like the dog that is barking in front of the restaurant because it's tied up, but if you untie the dog, it stops barking and sort of obediently stays put. It's not that everyone who goes to the data blog knows what to do with the data, but they're more comfortable with the fact that they could look at the data if they wanted to. It's that idea that it's there if they need it, right? Well, actually, it's uncomfortable for me to say it, but we say this all the time, so it must be true. That's actually not true. I hate to say it, most people just don't give a shit, hopefully yet. That's because data just isn't relevant to the average person walking down the street. We have a lot of work to do before we get to that point. It's easy to buy into this like reality distortion field that we create for ourselves here. I mean, I love you guys, but we have to all see ourselves as like 1 out of 1,000 or maybe 1 out of 10,000. That's a lot of work for each and every one of us to do to get to the point where you can just strike up a conversation about data at the Christmas dinner table or at your family reunion. So what's BuzzData all about? Ultimately, we believe that the problem that is holding back data from becoming a primary document type, from becoming something that everyone understands as soon as you start talking about it, it's not discovery. I mean, I think that discovery needs to be fixed. I think that there's too many places to turn and not an easy starting point for getting involved in data. But I think the actual thing that's holding us back is social proof. People are incredibly motivated by what they see their friends doing. And if the cool kids are not interested in this, it's not going to be cool. So I want to share a quote. People don't believe what you tell them. They rarely believe what you show them. They'll often believe what their friends tell them, and they always believe what they tell themselves. So what leaders do is they give people a story they can tell themselves. Stories about the future and stories about change. Some of you might recognize that as being from Tribes. I think it's actually the only paragraph in his book, Tribes, that I liked. But it was a good paragraph, and so for that alone, I salute Seth Godin. So we got this problem. People, in the general sense, outside of this room are vain. We're driven by things that we wish we weren't driven by. We have selfish instincts. Here's Vanity Fair selling the environmental agenda. And the thing is it's uncomfortable, but it's true. I mean, there are a lot of, well-intentioned but ultimately regressive forces working against our ability to push the messages that we wish that people could engage with out there. Some of you might be familiar with this bunch. This is Odd Future Wolfgang Kill Them All. It is the current most talked about, most hyped, most controversial hip-hop crew in North America. They actually they're terrifying to me, but they are what most kids today, that would be the teenagers and people in their 20s, seem to be gravitating towards. And they are real in that sort of ephemeral sense. Buzz data desperately wants to make data real to people. So what does that mean? Well, today, if you search for poverty on Google, one of the first things that comes up for poverty, or just about anything else you could look for, is the Wikipedia results. Well, pardon my shoddy slide making, but I'd very much like to see Buzz data pages for individual data sets become primary search results when people start searching on topics that are relevant to them. So that if someone's researching that if you want to read the story, the human element, then you're probably going to go to Wikipedia. But if you're looking to run the numbers, we can help you with that. So today, where do people put data? Well, The Guardian puts it on Google Docs. I don't like Google Docs very much. I always say to my friends that it's where data goes to die. The thing that offends me more than just about anything about Google Docs is this. If you look in the top right-hand corner of a new Guardian data blog post, in the dataset view, that is, you're confronted by this weird little drop-down. And some data sets that they publish don't get so much traction, but some of them will have hundreds of people actively looking at it all at the same time, like right now, the moment the article came out, because there's a hive of activity, a hive of interest about that type of data happening. And this stupid widget has the audacity to tell me that there are two other people who are similarly interested in the same information, but when I actually drop down the widget and see it, we're all numbers. I'm user 5954, and there's a whole bunch of other numbers there. I have no idea who those people are. I don't know why they're there, and I have certainly no way of keeping in touch with them. So it pisses me off, and it made me start thinking about an interface that where would I want to go if I was looking at a data set? So about a year ago, we started working on Buzz data. This is a Buzz data dataset homepage. You'll notice that we didn't immediately throw people into a spreadsheet. We actually started off with a high-level description, a narrative about the data that helps people get a bit of sense of the backstory and where it came from and maybe why it was generated. And it happened side by side with an activity stream that shows people talking about it, posting links, and engaging in debate. So what this means to me is that I don't need to be a hardcore data geek in order to be able to jump into a conversation about data that might be interesting or relevant. This is something that's sort of lost on anyone who links to a Google Doc, because at that moment you're sort of like, you're told, well, this is a dead end, it's read-only. There's people who must understand this more than I do, because I certainly can't do anything with it. So I'm just going to drop this like a hot potato and go back to surfing for YouTube videos. I think that is a failure of our opportunity to capture human potential. Now, of course, we do want to give people the ability to take a look at what the data looks like, but we also give people an opportunity to upload the articles that they've written about the data and the visualizations that they've made. There's also functionality coming soon for questions people have and apps that they've written. We're having a lot of fun sort of exploring what the types of information that want to be associated with data. I'm at 19 minutes according to my clock. Is this a half-hour talk? Yeah. Well, that's not my phone. Okay. I'll do my best. So the most important thing to someone publishing a data set is that they actually have the ability to connect round-trip style with the people who are actually using the data, and maybe even going so far as to keep in touch with them and see what they do with it. This is a major improvement from having an Apache web server log tell you that 50,000 people downloaded your data, but you have no idea who they are. Maybe you might get rough geography, but that's about it. In an environment like Buzz data, you can actually see how people take the data and what they actually go to do with it. And specifically, if they're really excited about it, if you look in the top right, I don't have my mouse working, but you can actually clone a data set and give yourself your own fully formed, fresh copy of the data, because they've agreed to allow you to take it and do what you want with it. And ultimately, you can keep it. It can take on a life of its own. You can suggest your changes back to the people who pushed the data in the first place. I think it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun to actually use. So you end up with this very social media activity stream, but instead of your hot beach vacation photos and breaking up with your boyfriend, it's the UN just updated their poverty indicators, or someone wanted to share something with you. And you'll forgive me for being biased, but I think this is awesome, and I think that this is needed. Specifically, I'm really excited to get past the era of people clobbering each other's files on network shares and emailing file attachments around. We want people to email URLs. We want people to be able to download the CSVs, or even go so far as to clone the data set if they're interested in it. There's a long road ahead of us. We're actually nearing our public release, but we're still going to be working on this for probably forever, because it's an evolving thing, and there's a lot of things we want to do, but we also want to make sure that what we're doing is motivated by what people are asking for and not what we think that they want. We have issues like licensing and tech stacks and just the messaging of what it is that we're trying to do, because heck, it's hard to explain in 30 seconds what we're all about to someone who's never heard of data before. I tried it last night and it was actually, quite frankly, rather exhausting. So we come in peace, we need help, and ultimately, we are your friends. We consider ourselves part of this movement, and yes, BuzzData is a pay for privacy. It's a startup. We're trying to make a go at this, and it's a different strategy than something you might see with CCAN today. There's an excellent chance that we'll end up open sourcing our code base. But right now, if you want to host a data set privately, then we can help you with that. If you want to target where your data lives physically, we can help you with that. So I'm going to wrap up with quotes from three of my heroes. Edwin Land created Polaroid photography, and he says don't do something unless you almost can't do it. If it's not almost impossible, it's not worth doing. Jessica Hishy reminds me every day that the things that I do when I procrastinate, because I procrastinate a hell of a lot, that's what I should probably keep doing, because that's what's making me happy, and that's what you're looking at with BuzzData. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, you might think that I'm crazy. I'm rambling about mining and all this leftist pinko politics, but the fact is that I think I'm right. And yesterday, Richard Stallman said that given the choice between working with proprietary software and doing nothing, you should do nothing. I think that's crazy. I'm willing to say it. So, in short, follow BuzzData, give us a hand, and let us know what you think we should be doing with it. If we leave here with your email addresses on our beta invite list, you will get in sooner than everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pete. I think Pete has agreed to take questions from people after the talks. I realized what it was now. I was looking at the clock, and you were looking at your timer because we were kind of 5 minutes late to start. So
all good.
That's what happened. So we're going to wrap up now and have the... Do you want to take a couple questions?
Yeah,
I think we
that's
can do that. Does anyone have a burning question? You've got a question there? Okay, I'll bring you the mic.
Be kind.
No, I'm just wondering whether you plan to use federated ID on this, because one of the issues with any new social networking-oriented site is everybody seems to want to own your ID rather than use one of the existing federated ID approaches, and that's a big problem, I think, in this area.
Yeah, definitely. So we will be exporting as there's various activity streams, formats, and whatnot. We are a startup, which means that we're pushing towards our vision of a minimum viable product. So you'll excuse us while we stumble through some of those things. I assure you that we are attempting to literally not be evil as opposed to Google, and that while you are able to look at a data set anonymously and download it, if you want to start jumping in and commenting and doing things that are sort of a bit more sophisticated than just anonymous drive-by, then you will have to have an account. If it becomes likely that we can easily glom onto other technologies that progressive people are working on, then we're certainly not opposed. Owning a social graph is not our business model.
Okay, Pete, thanks very much. Can everyone give Pete a round of applause? Our next speaker is Andreas Plumer.